place you're referring to? Which parts of
if you look in the actual item, you begin to see how we have a general tuition rate, but we also have rates for business and agriculture,
okay,
and then even within colleges we have agricultural engineering and so forth. So it gets to be a very complicated structure overall. I understand how it's evolved over the last 20 years, but I think it would be it's now time to look at that and see if we could streamline that in a way that would be more transparent for students and parents.
Right, because I was looking at it as well, but meaning in, for example, business and engineering pay, it's over $4,000 more. I think it's $4,600 more.
Yeah, and that's not to say that the figure's not right, but the way we package it, I think, is not very tidy.
And also your comment about non-resident tuition being out of line with the market, do you think it's too high?
Yeah, I think, historically we've had a 3-to-1 ratio, assuming that the state was probably picking up maybe 80% of the cost, so if somebody came from another state, it was appropriate to maybe charge 3 times the in-state rate. So if the in-state rate was $10,000, we'd charge $30,000. Now that the state support has fallen just about equal with student support, it's about 1-to-1 on both sides. We need to rethink that ratio. It probably shouldn't be any longer 3-to-1. Maybe it ought to be 2-to-1. Right now it's 2.6-to-1. But I don't know what the ratio should be, but we ought to, from a policy standpoint, we ought to look at what that number should be.
So the result would be a lower tuition for us.
Yeah, I don't see how it could go the other direction, but it might very well be lower.
President Ikenberry, there are some legislators who are, protesting.
You guys listening into this at all?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Not
I'm done with my 2 questions.
Okay. There are those who say that President Hogan should forego his salary increase. Do you think he's going to have problems relating to students and, the legislators who oversee the system once he comes in if he doesn't forego the salary increase?
I think first we're just incredibly lucky to have a seasoned, experienced university leader that's been at places like Ohio State, Iowa, and in Connecticut. He comes at a salary rate that is roughly the middle of the Big Ten salary compensation for presidents. He comes with superb academic credentials, but also experience in working with a major university hospital. I think the faculty voices that you heard today, the board voices that you heard a couple of earlier last week indicate that there's strong support both for his coming to the University of Illinois and the terms and conditions on which he's coming.
He brings all these credentials here, but he's coming in at a time of, fiscal crisis. Is it really appropriate to?
I think it's a challenge he'll have a challenge to work with the legislature and others to restore the support of the university, and he comes with his eyes wide open, understanding that the state is now almost $400 million in arrears in its payments to the university, that we face a lot of tough challenges. The board spent some time this morning hearing from an administrative review and restructuring commission that's focused on how we can do more with less. We're working on the academic side to do more with less, and I think he'll be quite capable of leading that effort.
Has he given any indication that he would accept $170,000 less? That's what they're asking for outside.
Nobody's asked him to do that other than those voices outside.
Does it concern you at all that what you heard about tuition and how it seems to have to go up every year to keep up with inflation? Maybe this is a better question for Mr. Kennedy as a businessman, but in a recession right now, inflation?
Well,
was
number one, you have to
deflation.
look at you have to look at a $45 million cut in our state support. You have to look at the fact that we're $400 million in arrear. The state's passed a borrowing bill. It's probably going to cost us $10 to $20 million additional next year simply to pay our interest costs. So where's this going to come from? Well, it's going to come from furloughing faculty members, cutting wages of existing employees. It's going to come from freezing positions and not hiring faculty that we should hire. But students also are going to need to share a portion of the load, and asking them to share at basically an inflationary rate, I think, is a good balanced policy that's fair to students and fair to the other groups within the university.
If the state was fiscally sound at the moment,
that's a nice dream.
yeah,
Yes, I like that.
Never going to happen. But if it was, would you still see a need for an increase? I mean, if they were caught up on their bills with you guys?
Well, if we instead of having a $45 million cut, if we had a $45 million increase, which wouldn't be totally out of reason, would we be looking at a tuition increase? I think maybe not, but that's simply not the world we're dealing with.
Now, you mentioned a financial aid increase in the coming budget. Can you explain that a little bit? How much is the financial aid going to go up for the next year?
Well, we invest from tuition funds. We invest about $50 million a year in financial aid. We have about 36% of our students on the Chicago campus that pay nothing in terms of tuition and fees. They receive gift aid sufficient to cover all of their tuition and fees. And that's important because if we're going to be able to recruit and retain students from the Chicago public schools and from elsewhere in Illinois, it's important that low and middle income students not be priced out of a top quality education. So that's been part of our heritage. In the past, it's part of our commitment going forward.
Thank you.
So is there going to be any increase in financial aid this year, or is it going to stay calm?
Yeah, that's what that's.
So it's a
what I
$50
just
million
told you.
increase from what was contributed last year?
It's a $6.5 million increase on top of about a $40 million base.
Okay. Thank you very much.